So, something, like, I've been thinking about a lot these days
Yeah.
is, like, I used to think the world is just so black and white, Like, there's just not any...
Yeah, when I was a kid, I used to think it was just good and evil. Like,
Yes,
it was just this and that. But now I'm starting to realize that's not the case.
Yeah, there's so many, like, in-between layers that just are becoming so much more apparent as
It's
time
like,
goes on.
you can't label people and things because there's so much depth to it, even if you can't see it. It's like, there's good and there's bad, but there's also in between, and there's also bad with good choices and good with bad choices. There's so much.
Yeah, and so that's what we'll be talking about in today's episode.
Yep.
So today is just kind of like going to be talking about this sort of philosophical...
The philosophical complexity and layers of our world.
Yeah, because I think just like something that's really important is realizing that it's not just one or the other. Sometimes there's a in between.
Sometimes it's not as
it's
you
not
see
that
it.
simple.
It's not that simple. That should be my motto. It's not that simple.
It's not that simple.
Like, it's like growing up, it was good and bad. Like, you're a good person or you're a bad person. You do good things or you do bad things. You're like nice or you're mean.
Even with like Christmas, you're naughty or you're nice.
Yeah, and it's like these not stereotype, but like these like perception that everything's one thing or another when there's so much in between. There's reasons behind things, like, oh, this person's just mean. Well, what if they're going through stuff? What if there's like stuff happening in their life, or like what if they didn't grow up in a situation where they had access to be like donate to charity, so you see them as like a bad person? But what if it's just like, what if it's the way they grew up? What if it's all this different stuff?
Yeah, so with that very cryptic intro, let's just dive into it.
So
let's just give some scenarios in which like we feel like the world has just been taught that there's black and white.
Yeah. So number one, I feel like it's just this perception when you watch movies, it's a superhero and a villain. And I think that ingrains in our mind like the villain's bad, the superhero is good. And from a young age, I think we just think of people like that. Oh, this person's good, this person's bad. When it's like, you don't know their backstory, you don't know their life, you don't know the reasons behind their choices, and it's like there's also in between.
I think something that's like really important that goes along just perfectly with what you said is like we're taught that there's good and bad, and we're taught that everyone who like does drugs is bad, and drugs are a bad thing.
Absolutely.
They're terrible, and this is like the first point I want to go into, but people who, if you are in like a family that has educated you about doing drugs and you still choose to do them and you have access to help and stuff but you choose to do drugs, that is a bad decision, and that is something that you should kind of be condemned for, not gonna lie. But there are causes beneath that like you could have like depression and like be led to do drugs.
Yeah,
or
absolutely.
you could be in a position where you've been introduced to things from an early age to the point where like you don't even have access to escape it and you start doing it without knowing it.
And it could also be you're living in a really bad situation, you're living in poverty, or you're not taught correctly, and it's like from a young age you're using them as a coping mechanism, and then you get addicted and you go from there. And it's like I always thought like it's just bad. It's bad. You're a bad person. But now like I'm starting to realize it's not that simple.
Like there's circumstances that lead you to make bad decisions, but that doesn't make you a bad person.
That doesn't make you a bad person. Absolutely. And that's something also with like teenage pregnancy. I feel like I used to just judge a person, but it's like you don't know what happened. You don't know their story. You don't know if they weren't taught correctly, or if it's like you never truly know. So it's like,
and I just want to say again that like we're not saying that doing drugs or being pregnant as a teen is good.
We're just saying like it's important to understand that like labeling is harmful. Like labeling someone as like bad because of a choice they made isn't necessarily accurate at all.
Yeah,
and it's
like if you're making that decision actively without any underlying cause, just to like be cool, or like if you're pressuring someone into doing that, that makes you a bad person. But if you're doing it because of underlying circumstances that you're just shoved into it, that doesn't make you a bad person, and we shouldn't view other people as
And I think it's this whole good person, bad person thing that's like the underlying cause of so many things. Like at least that's how I see.
And it's like we talked about drugs. Like kids, some people are like so deep into them that they can't get out no matter how much they want to. And they're judged for that, and they aren't brought to proper help and attention, which is so important. they aren't given proper rehab facilities. Their parents just kick them out thinking they're disgraces.
Yeah.
When in reality, all they need is help. They need like a therapist. They need someone to talk to. They need a way to get off of those things. And it's really important with teenagers too. I think a lot of teenagers that grow up in bad family situations start doing drugs without knowing like how detrimental they are.
And it's like, I just used to think it was like, you either do them or you don't, and you're bad if you do, and you're fine if you don't. And it's like, that's not always
There's
true.
a lot of gray area.
It's not just black and white. It's not just this, there, that, here. No, separation in the middle, like, that's how it is.
No.
That's not what life is. Like, life is complex, you know what I'm saying? Like, it's...
Yeah. I think that the next biggest example that I think is so prominent now is, like, Democrats and Republicans.
Yes.
There is such a big divide, and I feel like if people think that, like, if you support Trump, you're a terrible person, or if you support Biden, you're, like, a stupid, dumb, terrible person. So that, like, there's this huge divide between those people, but people don't understand that, like, a lot of people growing up were just taught a certain way, and they were chose to, like, support Republicans, or they're chose to support Democrats, and that's just how they grow up, and then they start growing, like, this allegiance, and, like, this type of, like, allegiance just to a specific cause, and they don't understand that, like, supporting a specific political party does not define who you are.
Yeah.
You are not defined just by being a Trump supporter or a Biden supporter. You are so much more than that, and we should take, like, time to understand more in depth how people are. And yeah, it's just like there's more to someone than being labeled as something, and that's something our society does. We just label someone as a drug addict, a Trump supporter, a teenage pregnancy.
And not only do we label them, but we put attachments to that, like bad. This is bad. This is good. This is bad. Like, it's like labeling them along with creating labels for those labels. Basically, it's leading to isolation and like all these different issues in our society.
Complex.
Yeah, it's like. It's ingrained in our mind to think that you're either with me or you're not. And if you're not, then you're bad.
Yeah.
If you are, then you're good. And it's like, that's not true.
There are two sides. There are multiple sides to everything. And I think we heard the phrase, there's two sides to every story. But I think there's actually like three. There's four sides.
I think there's so many sides.
There's multiple sides to everything.
And it's like right and wrong. That's another thing. Like in our lives, we see something as right and we see something as wrong. Like, there's so many examples of that. I can't even think of one right now.
Like,
why can't I?
Let's say, like bullying someone. There's right and wrong. Like, bullying someone is wrong. Not bullying someone is right. But is not bullying someone right, or is standing up for someone who's being bullied right?
Right. Exactly.
Yeah,
So it's like there are many examples of like and it's like. Everyone has this perception of what's right and what's wrong. If you make the wrong choices, you're a bad person. If you make the right choices, you're a good person. It's like, you could make the right choices and not be a good person. You could make the wrong choices and still have good intentions. It's like, there's all this intentions and morality and, like, all this complex thinking behind all of it.
And bringing back to, like, the labeling thing, I think that's something that I want to talk about a little bit more. Is, like, I feel like in school especially, like, with, like, our generation, we label people as, like, emo. We label people as popular. We label people as the mean girls. We label people as the
it's like
the what's it called? Like the jock boys.
Yeah, and it's like we jump to conclusions. Like the popular girls are mean and they're stupid and they're blah blah blah, and the nerdy kids are just nerdy and they're just not fun. Whatever. It's like we have these labels of like this group.
And then we associate those labels with other feelings.
Yeah, and it's like, just because you may have experienced those feelings at one point doesn't mean that you can label an entire group of people by those feelings.
Generalizing people is so wrong!
Thank you. And it's kind of like 9/11. We generalize, it's like this attack.
Hold on. We jumped to like 1 to 10.
Sorry, we jumped from popular kids to 9/11. Alright. But anyways, like 9/11, it's like after that happens, it's like some people who believed in the Islamic religion like took it to an extreme, and it's like we just see that entire religion as like bad because just a small percentage of people took it the wrong way, and it's like labeling them as bad for something that not all of them did is wrong, and just labeling it as even bad in the first place, like having this black and white of like this religion's good, this religion's bad, like this is good, bad, like it's not that complex. No, it's not that simple. Sorry.
It's not.
It is complex. It's not that simple.
Yeah, it's just like putting people in these jail cells that they have no ability of
Yeah.
escaping. If you're gonna have a set perception about someone or a group of people before you even know them or know their reasoning, that's like literally digging your own grave, because you're never gonna be able to build connections with people and find the people that would really make you be yourself.
And it's like, if you have these black and white perceptions, these good and bad of certain things before you even go into a situation, if you even view things as just good and bad, it's not going to help you at all. It's going to harm, like, it's going to hinder you, because it's important to, like, it's important to understand people and the reasons why they do things and the choices they make, not just, because that is fundamentally who they are. It's not just the actions they take and what they say.
And like
sometimes
the groups
it's deeper
they belong to.
and the groups they belong to and the labels that society puts on them. A lot of the times it's more about who they are as a person, and you may not know who they are as a person, so it's not fair to generalize them just by labels or misconceptions that you have ingrained into your mind because of society.
Yeah, it's like, I think this is like fundamentally this entire concept of like we have pre-underlining like psychological bias for how people will turn out.
Right.
That's what leads to racism, sexism.
Let's talk about psychological bias in the next half.
Yeah,
you know what? Let's end this half right now because it's been 10 minutes. Let's talk about psychological bias because there's some stuff to talk about.
Welcome back. We got really heated and I kind of just want to continue.
All right. So
like I was saying, this concept of just like making prejudgments about people and associating them to a group and associating that their characteristics are based off that group is like a psychological bias that we have that leads to racism and
we have so
everything.
many other types of psychological bias in our lives because of society. And it's like one example, when you read a book, actually someone was telling me about this.
Yeah.
Like when you read a book and they're talking about a character and they don't describe them physically, it's like it's almost ingrained into your mind to assume that they're white.
And they're beautiful.
Yeah. It's like you want to assume they're beautiful and you automatically assume that they're white, right? But it's like that's not always the case. It could be the case, but it could not be the case. And it's like we have this like idea ingrained in our mind of like this is it. It's like we have
everyone that we look up to and everyone that we like in like a fantasy is beautiful, or like your perception
it's like
of like
we have no realistic perceptions of anything. Like we have no realistic perceptions of who people are, or like generalizing people or even labeling people, because realistically people are people and the only thing we can label them as is human. Like,
and I'm gonna even like admit that like if I were a kid and I read a princess book about like a princess being ugly, I would be like, why is the princess ugly? The princess is supposed to be ugly.
Like princesses are pretty, and it's like this like queens are supposed to be pretty, and it's like, what if they're not? Like that doesn't make them any less.
Bad person.
That doesn't make them less. They're still a queen. They're still. It's like we have these things, and it's like sometimes we have these things we want that we don't know that we want. Like we want the character to be pretty, and it's like, why? That's not even realistic. It's
just like humans want to like things to be beautiful, and they want things to be a certain way. And when we start associating things with beauty and like ugliness, then that's what turns into a problem. And this is what ultimately leads to racism. I mean, I think people have this underlying
and it's like
thing that like white is superior, right?
No, and it's also, I think, that we view them as opposites. That causes such an issue. It's the fact that we're all human. It's not our skin color. Like, our skin color is a skin color, but the fact that we're like, okay, we have different skin colors, they're opposites. That's what's causing these issues.
I saw this thing and I really want to talk about it real fast. It's like I saw this thing. It's like we as a society decided that chocolate and vanilla are opposites.
Yeah.
But are they opposites?
Like, why is strawberry not the opposite of mint cream?
Yeah.
It's like, why are they opposites? Because that's what we have decided. It's not true. It's a skin color. Like, we just make these, and I think it's the opposites that's creating so many issues in societies. The fact that we view them as black and white, as opposite and opposite, as different and different. The fact that we view everyone as labeled in different and black and white and like put these misconceptions to groups of people, that's fundamentally why we have so many issues, because it's like deep down we're all people and that's the only label we have. But despite it's like you can't label someone without knowing them, and how can someone be the opposite of someone? Like, the only reason we have these opposites is just relative to something else. Like, the reason people are mean is because other people... Okay, the reason people are mean is because other people are viewed as nice. The reason people are pretty is because other people are viewed as ugly. It's all about relative perception of the world.
Everything is relative to
every
each other.
person were nice,
Because here's the thing, there's a standard for something all the time. So if you're not that, you're like you're
above or below.
Yeah.
It's like you're never just there.
And
it's
there
like,
can't be just a single standard for everything.
Yeah, it's like there shouldn't even be a standard in general. It's like it's creating these standards and creating this one standard for a group of people and creating these misconceptions and these labels for those standards.
Because everything can't, like, things that are so drastically different can't be relative to one thing. Like, opposites can't be like, everything can't be relative to, like, white and black. That's not how it works.
Yeah, and it's like, when you have this label, you're either on one side or the other, and that's how we create black and white in our society, because we have a standard, and that's how we create good and bad, and that's how we base it off of one thing. It's all relative to one thing, and it's like, you can't base everything off of something.
And you can only be one or the other.
Everything is unique and different, and it's like, you can't compare, and it's like, that's why I think we compare ourselves to others, because it's like, that's part of what we do as humans. We just compare, like, one thing to the other.
That's constantly what we do. We constantly are comparing
yourself to a pretty influencer. It's like comparing that and creating this ugly, pretty perception. If everyone, it's like, it wouldn't even be a thing if everyone were one thing. So it's like, it's just, we create this opposite of, like, ugly and pretty and good and bad because it's relative to each other. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Like, there would be no bad if there was no good. It's like this whole cycle of everything.
Yeah. And so, like, because that exists, that just leads to, like, people sectioning people into one group or another, bringing it back to where we started. People are one thing or another. There can't be two things at once, which is wrong. You can be bad and good at the same time, I think.
Yeah,
so you can be like, ugly and pretty at the same time.
Yeah, you can
inside,
be pretty and bad, and you can be ugly and good, like, everything.
And also, like, who decides that ugly people are, like, not heroine worthy?
Who decides that ugly people are ugly? Who decides anything?
Because everything is relative to what
That's
a base
how we
mark
decide stuff. Like,
oh
if
God.
everyone... Hold on. Yeah.
No, it's okay.
You go.
I'm joking.
You go.
Okay. So, like, if whoever decided first that, like, this is the standard of pretty, that's changing so rapidly over the years. Like, if you look back hundreds of years ago, the person that we thought was, like, the most beautiful person hundreds of years ago and made portraits about them, now they would be considered something else. So that's why I'm saying there's not a single standard for something. There are multiple different variations, and people need to understand.
When you think about it, if everyone was pretty, no one would be pretty, because there's nothing to base it off of, because if you're not prettier, then you're not pretty. It's about this it's about this more, it's about this less. If you're less than something, then you're less. If you're more than that standard, then you're more than it. Like, if you're prettier than this person, then you're pretty. But it's like, that doesn't even mean anything, right? Like,
yeah, because everything's based off something else.
Yeah.
And if there wasn't that base, then
and if we didn't have that base, if we didn't have the bias, if we didn't have the standard, if we didn't have the misconceptions, then I think we would get along a lot better.
Yeah, and that's just something that, like, we can't get rid of because it's part of human nature.
And it's like, we can't get rid of it, but we can learn to combat it. Like, when you start thinking that, when you start labeling people and realizing you're judging someone when you barely even know them, just think and be like, wait, this is just a misconception. I could be completely wrong. I don't know their situation. I don't know their life. I don't know their backstory.
I think really catching yourself is so important because, like, I've done this a lot recently when I started, like, thinking about this more. Just catching yourself making, like, judgments about people and, like, thinking, like, I don't know their backstory. I can't say immediately that they're a bad person because they do one thing bad or because they're affiliated with a certain group. Like, I can't make that judgment because I don't know everything and it isn't black and white. There is a gray area.
Yeah.
Period.
Absolutely. Period. Go get it. And I don't think anyone falls into the black or white category.
Exactly.
I think it's all just, I don't know.
I think it's everyone's just a shade of gray.
Yeah. Because no one can
50
be perfectly good and no one can be, shut up. You need to stop.
I'm joking.
You're going to jail. Okay.
Yeah,
this
that's black and white though.
Is bad. Okay, this is the only situation where we can label people. No. I'm a terrible person. It's okay.
Anyway. That was really heated.
Oh, I got passionate.
Anyways.
Thank you for listening.
That was our spiel.
Was that any lasting remarks?
Okay, I just want to say, you say it first.
Say what? Lasting remarks?
Your last remark.
Okay. My skirt. Oh, sorry. Okay. Okay, so lasting remarks. I feel like I said so much that I have nothing to say now. Like, I want to end off all good, but I feel like I can't. Okay, basically, our world is a world. And there are people in our world.
Yeah, okay. My last remarks. We, as humans, are constantly labeling and categorizing, and that's just, like, psychological things that are natural. And we often make assumptions based off one characteristic of someone, of how the rest of their personality or the rest of their decisions will be. But we can't do that because we know in the past that, like, even if someone does one thing or is a part of one group that is known to be bad, then that doesn't mean that they can't change or that they overall are a bad person. So it's important to catch yourself making these judgments and just ultimately understand that one thing doesn't decide everything.
Yeah, thank you. That was a good remark. All right.
Check out our social media. I'm just over here trying to promo us all day, every day.
Guys, we are inspirational promoters.
Sure. Anyway, check out
I
our
hope
social
that was
media.
inspirational. I don't
I
think
hope
it
you
actually.
gained something from
Yeah.
it.
Like, I want to sound all inspirational. I don't think I pulled it off, to be honest.
I hope it wasn't too confusing, because I know.
It probably was. But hey, you love listening to rants, don't you?
Yes. Anyway, follow us on our social medias. They'll be in the bio. We do news updates, we do Fun Day Fridays, and we do rants like this, as well as educational topics.
Yeah, so thank you. Our next, wait, actually, never mind. Ignore that comment.
It's probably Christmas Eve today, so tomorrow's
Christmas.
Merry Christmas.
Wait,
and
wait.
whatever else you celebrate.
Wait.
Oh, we're talking about when it's posted.
Okay, I was like,
Yeah,
am
so-
I missing something?
Yeah, enjoy that, and I hope you have a
Thank
good holidays,
you.
even if you don't celebrate Christmas.
Yeah, so whatever you're celebrating, just celebrate life.
Yeah. And follow us, all of our socials, email us if you have
Yeah.
any episode suggestions.
So thank
and
you.
check out our website.
All right, bye.